Hi everyone, welcome to today's session where we're going to discuss what are the kind of features that Claude AI offers us, especially as lawyers. I'm going to be sharing my screen. Now, this is the kind of first view that most people have when they log into Claude. Now, I'm not demonstrating a paid account here because I'm presuming many of you may be having free accounts. Usually, most of the features are going to be the same. It's just that in a paid account, you get more usage. The quality usually doesn't change, but the quantity improves. So this is a free account, as you can see on top. So almost every feature that you see here, all of you should be able to replicate. So it's ideal if on your screens you also log into your cloud account so you can follow along. Now, most people would just start off by asking a question here. But actually, there are a lot of things that we need to configure before we even start to ask questions. So the first thing that I want you to do is click on customize. Now, this shows you a lot of features. And the first thing that we need to look at is general. I hope you can all see this clearly on your screen. Now, here, obviously, whatever your name you want to add, that's fine. But this instructions for Claude, this is something a lot of people usually do not fill in. Now, here we need to give some context about us and the kind of work that we are going to do on with Claude. This will help it generate better answers. Now, I want to know from you, have you guys ever filled this before? Like in your Claude accounts, have you ever entered anything here in instructions? Give me a quick yes or no. Then I'll decide, know how much deeper to go into this. Can more of you reply on that? Okay. So now what are the kind of things that we should put here? Okay, since I can see most of you don't already do this. So first I give it a context that I'm a tech lawyer practicing in India since 1999. This is my background. And because I have to tell it, do not explain fundamentals, define common legal terms, or summarize what provision generally does. So the reason we need to say all this is because you may notice when you ask questions, a lot of times there's text which is showing on your screen which is not relevant to you. You may be very good in a particular field, but the AI is explaining the basics a little too much. So you need to tell the AI that. So that is why we put in the context. Then we put in the jurisdiction and conventions. Very, very important. Now, for example, here I've said it is Indian law unless I specify otherwise. Now, whichever country's laws you're working more on, you would ideally write that. Now, you may notice that we've also told it the date format and the currency to use. Why date format? Because, for example, in America, it would be month, day, year. But in India and many other countries, we write date, month, year. So we need to specify that. Otherwise, every contract or every output that we get will have a lot of errors that we need to then sit and manually do. Similarly, here, when it is citing a statute, so do it by section and act, cite cases in a particular format. We need to tell it all this. Now, for example, in India, there was a lot of amendment some time ago where IPC, CRPC was changed and the new acts came in. So we can also say that where these new acts have replaced the older ones, give the new provision and the corresponding old ones. So these are the kind of things that are going to be used in almost every chat or conversation that we have. So it is better to put all this in the instructions once rather than then repeating it in every chat. Then we also need to give it some accuracy clause that never produce a citation that you are not confident is real. So we all know that hallucination is a very big problem for AI. I'm not saying that just by adding these few lines, it will 100% remove it, but to a great extent, it is going to do that. So for example, we also saying distinguish clearly between what is settled law, contested law, and your own reasoning by analogy. The more of these instructions that we give, the better is going to be the quality of the answers that it gives us. So another very critical thing, a lot of people, wonder that when we are giving confidential client related information, what does AI really do with it? Now, obviously, we cannot completely stop the AI from using that, but we can say that treat every fact, document, name, and figure that I give you as privileged client material. Do not reuse it in general explanations or in hypotheticals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this entire thing and put it into the chat. So all of you can see this material. I'll of course put it up on the blog also. Okay, it's not getting pasted. I think it's a little too long for this thing. Don't worry. I'll share this with you on the group. So it will give you an idea about how you should configure this. Of course, you will make whatever little changes are required depending upon your area of practice. But this is the first thing that you need to do. As always, if there are any questions, keep putting them in the chat and I'll answer them. So I hope this part is clear. So we did all this in the general tab under the instructions for Claude. Now there are another two things that you should look at. One is if you want to use voice, which I think you should all use because it saves a lot of time. Choose your language and then choose which style you want. So, the voice type which you prefer, and then also choose the speed. Now, personally, I prefer this glassy voice and I prefer fast. But then it's totally up to you. You could choose slow or normal or fast, and you can choose whichever of these voices you prefer the best. Now, once we have done this, there's another option here which says response completions. Now, sometimes when you ask a question and it is going to take Claude a long time to reply, in that scenario, you may go off to another tab and you want to be notified when Claude actually finishes. So in that case, you keep this ticked on as blue so that whenever it is done, it'll just give you a browser notification. Now, other than that, we can see account. Now, I hope all of you are also able to click and do that. Now, this becomes important because there may be times that if you are worried that someone's hacked into your account and they're using it. Now, in case you're wondering why would someone want to hack into your Claude account, there are a lot of reasons. Because if I get access to your Claude account, I know exactly what kind of questions you are asking. I know what kind of answers Claude is giving you. And maybe if we are representing in the same case, I'm on the other side, I'll come to know exactly what is your line of thinking. So this is also something that we always need to keep in our mind. So when you go to this second option, which is account, you need to go into active sessions and see where all is your account being used. So if you see something here which is not correct, or you see a trusted device here which is actually not yours, then you know that someone has hacked into your account and you need to do something. Then you can quickly log out of all your devices, reset your password, put your two-factor, and then start to use it. By the way, I hope I'm not going too fast. If I am, just let me know here. And if the speed is fine, just give me a yes. The next thing we need to look at is privacy. Now, what happens here is that Anthropic tells you what they are doing, but it also takes two permissions from you. Now you can uncheck both these. The first one is locational metadata. So it says that should Claude use this, your location, like your city and region, to improve product experience. I always prefer to keep that switched off. And the second one is, do you want to allow Claude to use your chats and coding sessions to train and improve their own AI model? I always keep that as off. Then if you want to download your data, uh, you can say, export data, or if you want to download your chats and other things, your artifacts, all of that you can manage from here. Then there is something called memory preferences. Obviously, I'm not showing you what's showing up in mine, but depending upon the kind of questions you ask, it is going to build a memory about what is it that you like to do, what you ask questions on, what kind of answers you prefer. So all of that you can configure from the memory preferences, very easy to do. If you're moving from one AI to another, you can actually export memories from the other one and come and paste it into this one. So that kind of helps the AI to really understand how you like your conversations to be. Now, one more thing which is probably going to be very important for some people is the capabilities, where if you're using tools, now many of you may wonder what tools are. So, there are these third party apps. For example, somebody may be having a service where they provide access to case laws of India or the US or UK or other countries, maybe to the actual laws and statutes. These can be configured like tools. And then when you are asking a question and Claude is creating the answer for you, it can load these tools in. So depending upon what makes sense for you, you would either say that load tools whenever they are required, or tools are already loaded. So where you are doing that, I would always prefer leave it as to load them when they are needed. So this kind of makes it faster, and only when a tool is really needed, it will actually get loaded. And I'm also now going to show you something very important about how we can add skills and plugins into Claude. We'll come to that in some time. Then this is another very critical thing. Switch models when a message is flagged. And I'll explain to you why we sometimes use this. So let's say we are doing a case which involves some health related information. Sometimes what happens is the Claude thinks that you are asking questions about an area that it is not allowed to answer. So while you are talking about health, of somebody from a legal point of view because maybe it's a medical negligence case. But Claude may get the feeling you are trying to ask for health advice which it does not want to give. It may not consider it safe. So it puts a guardrail and it will not answer your question. Now, a particular model may refuse to answer, but another one may agree. So Claude has multiple models, which I'll show you in some time. In that scenario, always keep this switched on so that if one model doesn't answer that question, it can then switch to another model which may actually give you an answer. The rest of these are fairly simple. You can just kind of leave them the way they are by default. Okay, Claude Code, most of you are not going to use. This is mainly for developers. Most lawyers don't really need to do that. So let me not go in. Let me then tell you briefly what a connector is. Not sure how many of you have ever used this, but if you want Claude to connect to your Gmail, read your emails and then help you to answer them, or sometimes even auto answer, then you can do the connection. This is not something I ever do. Google Drive you may find useful. So when you connect Google Drive to your Claude, it can then connect and read all your documents. So suppose you want to keep all your documents in Google Drive and then you want to give Claude access to that and then ask questions based on it, then click on the connect and it will connect your Google Drive to your Claude account. As of right now, as you can see, I've only done a GitHub integration as the connectors, but it's totally up to you, whatever makes sense. If you don't understand what this section means, ignore it, don't have to do anything. Okay, now we come to the most important, which is the plugins. So I've developed a series of about 159 different skills for lawyers to use. Now, what do we really mean by a skill? I will give you an example of this, and then I'll come back to how do we do this. So let's say that I ask Claude that this is a document. So I have given it a PDF. It is a 70-page contract. And then I just simply said, review this. So now it gives me this small little review because by default, that is what Claude thinks you want when you are reviewing a particular contract because we haven't given it any kind of legal skill. So it is not actually thinking like a lawyer, it is thinking like a regular person. Okay, a contract is given to me. I am quickly going to answer it. But when we give it proper skills, and let me show you an example of now what it's going to give us as an answer. Now it is going to give us a very, very comprehensive kind of an answer. So firstly, when we gave it the contract and we said the exact same thing, review this. That's what we said even when we had not put a plugin. But when we put a plugin and we say this, it actually asks you a question that before I dig in, I need one piece of information. Which party are we reviewing this for? The seller or the buyer? Now, earlier it had not asked us this question, but now because we have given it a legal skill, it understands that its answer is going to change depending upon which side it is actually going to give the answer for. Then it has given us a little more information and we can give answers for that. And then it actually starts the review. And now if you notice this review, it is going to be very, very comprehensive. Of course, I'm going to share this link with you so that you can open up these two reviews side by side on your computer and you will begin to understand how different it is going to be. Now, what it has done here is it has given us a comprehensive document with this review. Now, I'm just quickly, briefly going through it. Once I share the link, you will be able to open this. But what you can see now is how detailed the response has become. So, for example, when it is making a list of issues, we can see, sorry, how many of these issues have been done. Obligations and dates ledger has been created. Now, we did not ask it to do any of this. We simply said review. And a very, very long detailed review is created. There's even a coverage sweep here, which analyzes 41 pre-decided kind of parameters based on which it is going to give us an answer. Now, I have used the same free Claude, but you can see the difference in the quality. Without a plugin, when it behaved like a regular AI assistant, it gave me a very short overview. With the plugin, it behaved like an expert lawyer and it gave me a very comprehensive review. So what I'm going to do is now in the chat, I'm going to share two URLs with you. The first one is without the plugin, what kind of answers it gives us. So you can take that from the chat. And the second one which I'm giving you is with the plugin. So later, after this session is done, I want you to open up both these responses and compare the difference to understand why we are actually supposed to use plugins. By the way, like I said, if you guys have questions, please feel free to ask them. Okay. Now, let me show you how we can add plugins. By the way, I hope everything is clearly visible to you on your screens. Okay. Okay. Now, in Customize, we have an option called Plugins, right? Now, when we go into Plugins, we can browse them or we can add them. Now, if it is the first time that we are adding something here, obviously you are going to add it. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to add a marketplace. What do we mean by a marketplace? Where a lot of plugins are available. So I've created about 24 different plugins, and in each plugin, there are different skills. So it's a total of over 159 skills packed into 24 plugins. So what you're going to do is, and this is all available for free on GitHub. So we need to put the URL. I'll show you how that is. So what we do is we go to add marketplace, we click on add from repository. Now, if this looks scary to you, don't worry. It's a one-time thing. Once you add it, you don't have to bother about this again. So what we've done is we have put the URL here and we can simply say sync. So, okay. Now in this case, it shows this marketplace is already added because I did that just before the demo. In your case, it will say marketplace has been added. And again, I'm sharing the link with you. Now that we've added the marketplace, we should be able to browse it and we should be able to see all the different skills that are available. So now here we can see it will show under this plugins, there's an option called personal. Because we install this right now, it will all show up under personal. And here you are going to be able to see all the 24 different plugins, right? Now, one is called advisory, arbitration, conciliation, consumer contracts. Let me go into the contract since that's the one that we were using right now. So what this contract one does is it reviews, drafts, compares, negotiates, and does risk analysis. So that's a small this thing. You just click on the word install. Inside this, you can see that it has got these skills. I hope this is clearly visible to you. Yeah. Now, the way that plugins are made is that when we make a plugin for contracts, inside that we add various skills, like what do we want that particular plugin to do. So for example, you or the user may be drafting a contract. So we call that as a contract drafter. We may be analyzing the indemnity liabilities. We may be reviewing a contract. We may be redlining it. So each of these things becomes a skill. Because they all relate to contracts, they are clubbed together into what we call as a plugin. But you don't have to worry about these individual skills. All that you need to do is click on this install button. Now what it's done is it has taken that entire contracts plugin and it is going to add it into your Claude. Now, whenever you ask a question, it will realize whether or not you have a plugin for that. So when you ask it that this is my contract and I want you to analyze it, Claude will immediately realize that it has got the skill and it will on its own pick up the skill. You don't even have to do anything. So it will now understand all this, that there is a skill called clause comparator. There is something called contract drafter. There is something called contract reviewer. Claude now knows that these skills exist in your system. You don't have to bother. It will pick it up whenever required. So your work becomes very, very easy. Now, as I gave you in this example, there are many different plugins that are available, right? So now, depending upon the kind of work that you're doing, you will choose which of these plugins you actually want to install. Let me know if you have any questions on this. Let me just quickly browse and show you what all options will be available. So now let's say that you are into corporate law, then maybe you'll find that the corporate one is also relevant to you. You may find criminal being relevant, family related, finance law, and of course, IP. So like this, there are 24 different ones. Depending upon the kind of work you do, you may end up needing more than one plugin. Now, there's no cost to any of this. So you can just click on all of them And then once they are into your system, Claude can pick it up whenever it needs to use it. I have a question. Can we use multiple plugin for one research? Absolutely. And the best part is you don't really need to bother. Once you install the plugin into your Claude, it knows what it has. So depending upon the questions you asked, it will pick up all the skills that it needs to use. So you don't have to worry about telling it that, you know what, for this question, please look at litigation and IP because it's an IP related litigation. You don't have to say it. It will automatically pick it up for you. All that you need to do is make sure that you have installed those plugins. Now, whenever you look at the plugins, if you see this gear looking icon, it means you've installed it. If you see plus, it means you've not. So click plus plus, install them, and all the 159 skills will automatically be installed. Someone has an interesting question. What is the difference between uploading files in project and using them through plugins? I will explain that to you. Now, before I go into that, project is totally different from a plugin. Project is just a place to store your data. So let me show you what that means. So I have created a sample one. Okay. So here you see something called projects, right? Computer's a little slow. I guess the internet's bad today, but let's just wait till it comes on. Okay. Now I have created one project which is called cross-examination. Let me go into that. So what we mean by a project is a bunch of files can be put together. So let's say that in this example, we are preparing for a cross-examination. To prepare, we put a whole bunch of documents. Like for example, there is uh, some exhibits here. There is a master chronology document. So about 15 or 16 documents have been put. And I am going to ask multiple questions, right? If I am going to ask multiple questions about a set of multiple documents, then a project is a very good thing to do. Project will hold all the files in one place. And every time that I ask a question in the project, it is going to refer to all these 16 and then answer. So I'll give you an example. I've already asked one question, right? Now that question was one liner on each of these documents and one para intro. I did not have to say which documents to use because I went into the project and I asked a question. It knew that it has to use all those documents and give me an answer. So it has now given me a one para and it has given me a one liner on each of the 17 documents that I've uploaded. But your question was about a plugin. Plugin is totally different. Plugin gives it a skill. Project is simply a way to hold multiple documents in one place. Sort of like in your computer, you have folders. Consider a project to be like a folder. But when you add the plugin, it will look at those same documents as an expert lawyer and then answer. So project is like a folder. Plugin gives it a skill. So from being a general assistant, it becomes an expert IP lawyer because of the plugin that we gave it. So I hope that makes the difference simpler for you. Now, okay, I see some more interesting questions. Okay, is there a patent law plugin? No. So what I've done is right now I've made a plugin called IP and it has multiple things in it. Now I want you guys to start looking at all these. By the way, these also work in ChatGPT and it's much easier to use there because there I put it in the ChatGPT marketplace. In the next session, I'm going to go deeper into ChatGPT. So how to use that as a lawyer. That time I will show you how to use the same plugins in ChatGPT. So download them, use them in Claude, and then tell me if you think something is missing. I'll definitely add more. Plugin is a group of skills. Skill is a pre-written prompt. Sure, that's a very good way of looking at it. Although I would say skill is a little more than a prompt, but yeah, sure, you could say it's a very powerful prompt. And plugins is a group of these. Absolutely correct on that. For drafting standard documents, for example, IP or criminal litigation, can a skill do this consistently without varying the content? Yes, it can. That is the reason that we use skills. If we don't use a skill, then every time we have to use prompts, if the prompt changes a little bit, which will always happen, the results become very different. What the skill does is it standardizes things. And a skill takes into account a lot of things and makes sure everything is completed. So skill is definitely what you should be using. It will take your skills, it will take your output 10x better. In projects similar to the spaces we create in Perplexity, trying to build an analog. Yeah, yes, I think it should be very similar. I'll be very honest. I do not use Perplexity, but I think Perplexity spaces would be the same. I don't know if Keshav is on the call. Maybe he could answer since he loves to use Perplexity. I personally, I'll be very honest with you. I do not use Perplexity. I'm more a fan of ChatGPT, Claude, DeepSeek, and a few others, and Grok, of course. Someone asked, is this somewhat similar to Notebook LM? Okay. When you say Notebook LM, it's a large language model. So when you're comparing, you could compare it to ChatGPT, Claude, and inside that they have models. Now, what Notebook LM does is it functions like a project. It is developed to be like that. So when we put files into a project in ChatGPT or Claude, we are replicating what Notebook LM does. So in that way, you are correct. But I don't think Notebook LM supports skills. Again, that's not something I use, so I wouldn't know about that. What are the limitations of plugins enforced by Claude? Okay, so I haven't really found anything, but that's a good question. I only faced one difficulty when I was uploading my plugins to ChatGPT. It created a problem with the healthcare one. So, although the documents that I had made, the skill that I had made was looking at it from a law point of view in a medical negligence case, but the AI felt that this is trying to give medical advice and it blocked that particular skill, which I had to remove. Other than that, till today, I have not found any kind of a problem when it comes to creating skills and plugins. The healthcare related issue is the only time where I faced a slight issue. Maybe, each AI has its own guardrails about what it is allowed to do and what it is not allowed to do. So if the skill is something where it feels that it is not allowed to do something, then it is going to create that slight problem. But otherwise, in all these 24 plugins, 159 skills, except for one, I did not face any other problem. So now another way, if you don't want to use a project, now if I'm talking about 17 documents and I'm going to do multiple chats in that, then definitely I'm going to need to use the project. But if I feel there is only one document, then what I do is I just do plus here and I add the file. So suppose there is one contract or one document and I'm just going to ask a few questions, then I don't need to create a project. I will directly add that file into the chat and then I will start asking it questions and it is going to give me the response. So multiple files, make a project, single file, few questions, you don't have to make a project. Now here you'll notice there are other features also. Skills we've already, so skill is just a part of the plugin, so you can ignore it because we've already put in the plugins. Then there is something called a connector, which I already told you, you can connect Gmail, Google Drive and other things that can be done. When you keep web search on at that time, while giving you answers, Claude is going to look at the internet also. Now, if you are using that, I would always recommend specify the sites it should look at. So one option is you could tell Claude that please only look at credible sites, but then it can guess. Second is you would say, okay, if you're looking for laws, only look at indiacode.nic.in for India laws. If you're looking for case laws, only look at this site because otherwise it is even going to look at Instagram and Facebook and there people could have put up incorrect information. But your AI will consider it to be good information and it'll answer based on that. Never use social media published information for your legal work. So always specify what kind of sites it should actually be using. Now, if you notice here that there are multiple models that are available. So for example, when we are using Claude, we can use Haiku, Sonnet, Opus, and Fable. So now another question comes in. Which of these should we use? Now, obviously, one thing to consider here is going to be pricing. So for example, in a free account, these two will not be allowed. So it will say upgrade. Once you pay that $20, even then Fable will not be available. It will say buy extra credits. So Fable is like their topmost and most expensive model. Opus, I would say, is very good. Sonnet is also very good. Haiku, I would not recommend at all for legal work. Now, you obviously will have a question, how do we know like regularly these models are changing? So that is the reason I do what is called as AI benchmarking. So this is something that I have spoken about before. What I do is I take these different AI models and I make them do legal work and then I grade them and then I understand which AI model is good and which is not. I will give you an example. So in one of my tests, what I do is I give the different AI models the 2025 All India Bar Exam. Now, if you're a lawyer from India, you understand what the bar exam is. It's after you finish your law and before you get a license to practice, you have to clear this exam. Now, when I gave that to some of the Claude models, Claude Opus 5 scored 93.7, Sonnet scored 81.1, and Haiku was 73.7. Now, an important point to consider is I did not allow these AI models to browse the internet while taking the exam. They had to use their own inbuilt knowledge. Every AI model is trained by the creator. So I made sure that it was not using the internet, because if it used the internet, it could have found the answers and all would have got 100. Test wouldn't have been of any use. So when I did that, I realized that the best was Opus, second was Sonnet. Now this test failed on Fable because the way Fable is structured, it kind of doesn't support these kind of tests. So looking at this, I would strongly recommend that you use Opus or you use Sonnet. Having said that, never rely upon the general knowledge of the AI. Always give it the document. Even though an AI has got 93%, it still would make mistakes. The 6% odd is missing. Plus, it can make more hallucinations. And in law, we cannot afford a mistake. That is far more dangerous. A low quality output is okay, but hallucination is not okay. Which is why, no matter which AI model we use, no matter how it is doing on tests, like for example, I will give you an example. If I look at how ChatGPT performed on these tests, right? One of their models did 100%. Yeah. ChatGPT 5.6 Sol got 100%. But even then, I would never give it a legal question without giving it all relevant documents. So if I'm asking a question relating to CPC, I will upload the CPC either into a project or into a chat. If I'm asking it a question based on certain case laws, I will either give it the link to the credible source or I will upload the case and then only ask it to analyze it and give me the answer. That is absolutely 100% thing. Never ask the AI to do any legal work on its own knowledge, unless, of course, it is things like drafting a contract where you could give a sample or couldn't. But whenever it needs to access a law or a case law or anything like that, give it the actual matter. To ensure that it doesn't use internet, is desktop version would be required, or no, even in the browser version, I think you can switch off the web, then it won't be using it. But like I said, there's no problem using the web. Give it the original document, it wouldn't need to go searching on the internet. Ask it to go to credible sites, your answers will get better. So why I explained this benchmarking to you is models are constantly changing. Like right now, it is Sonnet 5, it could become Sonnet 6, it could become 5.1. So keep looking at the benchmarking. All the links are available in your Learn platform. And whenever a new model comes out, I anyway test it under various parameters. Taking the All India Bar exam is only one parameter. I also make it do the CLAT. I also make it do UK solicitor exams. I've also developed a global kind of thing where it asks questions based on US, German, and Indian laws. When you look at all these benchmarks, you will make a better decision about which model to use for the work that you're doing, right? And then there is also something called effort, which you guys may have always noticed, and this is also very critical. Once you have chosen the model, the next thing you need to do is what effort should it put in? If the question is very simple, like you have given it some text and you wanted to only format, you wanted to cross check dates, even low can work. By default, I would say leave it at medium. But if it is going to do complex work, like let's say you are going to give it 5 contracts and then ask to find some kind of relation between them, then go high, extra, or max. Obviously, remember that the higher you go, the more it is going to cost you in terms of tokens. So even if you're on a $20 monthly package, once that number of usage gets over, then for some time your account will get blocked. And then you have to wait for it to reset. So don't use max or extra or even high for normal tasks. Depending upon the complexity of the task, use medium or high. If it is very, very complex, only then consider going to extra or max. Otherwise, it can become costly. Do we have a sort of plugin where we can add all the commonly used bare acts so that we can only have to mention the name of that? Okay. If you want to do this, you are either going to put it into a project, or a better way is you add a connector. So you could take all the laws that you regularly need, upload them into, for example, Google Drive, and then connect that Google Drive to here. So either put it into a project or put it like this, or then there are people who provide API services. You could integrate those. people who provide something called MCP, which I'm not 100% sure whether Claude supports, but I think ChatGPT does. So there are other ways to solve it. But no, a plugin is not the solution for that. Plugin, always consider it like a skill, some information which will make it give better answers. But giving it the actual law, that's not what a plugin is for. There you will use project or a drive, or then you can use third-party services. So I hope that answered all of your questions. This is kind of more or less what I wanted to talk to you guys today about. So now, after the session is done, what I would want you to do is open up your Claude, go to customize, set up the plugin. I'll share the links for all this also. I will be putting this video up also on YouTube, and in the video below that, I'll put all these links so you will get all your answers. If there are any more questions, feel free to ask me now. Otherwise, we'll close this session. The next session I'm going to keep is on using Claude. So, using ChatGPT. So what we did today using Claude, we'll see similarly how it is going to work in ChatGPT. So I do not see any other questions. So great. Take care. Bye-bye. Have a nice weekend.